They laughed at us. Not just laughed, dismissed, ignored, insulted us. Like we were primitive dogs barking at a cosmic hurricane. That's how they saw Earth. Just another planet with loud, chaotic bipeds who barely understood faster-than-light travel and were too busy killing each other over dirt and ideology. But the elders knew better. They weren't human, not even close. No one knows what they looked like anymore, just fragments, warnings, encrypted ruins left behind by a species that had seen farther into the galaxies than any of us. 10,000 civilizations studied their records. 100 empires tried decoding their messages. Only humans, the latecomers, had the madness to listen. And I was the only one who believed. My name is Riker Dames. I used to serve as a lieutenant in the Terran Deep Reach Fleet, mostly border patrol and escort missions. After I got discharged, fractured leg, busted nerves, medical retirement, I started poking through off-grid science junk. Freelance xenoarchaeology. Glorified grave robbing, really. But that's how I found the signal. It came from the ruins of Orcs 9, half buried beneath a collapsed starport. No empire claimed that planet anymore, not after the Scream. That's what they call it. 2 years back, the atmosphere trembled and turned to glass. Everything alive, vaporized in a blink. I was dumb enough to walk into the epicenter with nothing but a cracked scanner and a recon drone. That's where I heard the Elder broadcast. Not in sound, not in words. It was pressure, thought, a memory pressed into space itself, like an echo of something ancient trying to warn us. Beware the veil that eats, it said. Not in English, but that's how it felt in my bones. I remember standing there, the wind from a dead world whispering over my gear, and I felt my body react before my brain did. Fight or flight kicked in, hard. My hands shook. My heart thudded like I was in the middle of a battlefield again. I knew something was coming, and I knew they wouldn't believe me. I filed my report. Nobody listened. Terran Council called it interesting. The Trillari Empire called it primitive superstition. Even the cyber diplomats from the Binary Assembly, those cold AI freaks, sent back a one-word response: irrelevant. Only one species in the galaxy takes threats seriously. United States. Because we've lived at the edge of extinction longer than anyone else. We know what it's like to survive against impossible odds. War, plague, famine, betrayal. It's in our blood. So when the elders whispered doom, I didn't laugh. I armed up. And I wasn't the only one. There was a small human fleet in the Perseus Drift. Scrap ships, mercs, exiles. Not military, not even close. But they'd seen enough horror to trust a gut feeling. They started calling themselves the Ashborn, because they were the ones who'd rise from the ashes if everything else burned. I joined them. By then, whispers started spreading. Whole planets going dark without a sound. Drones coming back melted. Gravity fluctuations twisting moons into spirals. The galactic powers blamed each other. But it wasn't war. It was the veil, and it was coming. The elders tried to warn them. We tried to follow the clues, to decode the relics, to understand what kind of threat could make an entire ancient civilization vanish. But the more we looked, the more we realized something horrific. It doesn't kill, it consumes, it learns, it mimics, and worst of all, it waits. Now the stars themselves are starting to go quiet, and humanity, the species they mocked, enslaved, regulated, and underestimated, might be the only ones crazy enough to fight back. We lost contact with Kralos Station at 0200 hours. It wasn't a fade-out, no glitch. One moment the command channel was full of routine chatter, cargo updates, system scans, fuel requests, and then nothing. Dead silence, like the whole place had been ripped out of time. The Council said it was a solar flare. The Binary Assembly blamed a human cyber attack. Of course. The Vivari sovereignty threatened sanctions if it happened again near their trade route. None of them said the truth. But I knew. We all did. The Veil had arrived in our sector. Kralos was a Class 2 station, not big but not helpless either. It had defensive drones, layered shielding, emergency FTL beacons, standard fail-safes. If something natural had hit it, at least some debris would have floated into nearby sectors. But our patrol drones returned empty. No wreckage, no radiation trail, not even dust. It was like someone had deleted a piece of the universe. Ashbourne Command pulled me in for analysis. Commander Harren, ex-Martian Black Ops, scar running from temple to chin, didn't speak unless something mattered. That morning, he didn't stop pacing for 10 straight minutes. The rest of us sat around the briefing table in a half-lit cargo bay, surrounded by crates of salvaged alien tech, makeshift rifles, and a coffee machine older than the fleet itself. "What do you think happened, dames?" Harren finally asked me. I swallowed. We're not facing a species, we're facing a mechanism. The Elders didn't describe it as a life form. They called it the Veil, something that pulls you into itself, learns, changes, then moves on. Like a virus, muttered Vec. Half Kieran, mostly quiet, brilliant tactician. Adapts to resistance, evolves to bypass it. Except it's not alive, I said. It doesn't negotiate, it doesn't conquer, it erases. "Why hasn't it hit us yet?" someone asked. I looked up at the map. Dozens of red dots blinked across the starfield, systems gone dark, worlds erased. It studies first, then it acts. We all stared at each other. That was the horror of it, knowing something is out there watching, learning how to make you vanish without a trace. And we'd seen the pattern. The closer it got to Terran space, the slower it moved, like it was waiting for something. Harren clenched his jaw. "Then we move first." That was the day humanity made its first preemptive strike in galactic history, and the day every other species labeled us mad. The Ashbourne split into 5 squadrons. We identified an anomalous signal near the edge of the Darlan Rift, a gravitational ripple that matched what we saw before Kralos disappeared. Vec believed it was an eye, a sensor maybe, a scout. Whatever it was, we were going to kill it. My squad was on the Mournblade, an old Terran stealth cruiser retrofitted with alien EMP coils and railguns stripped from a Vivari warship. We didn't have permits. We didn't ask for help. We slid into the rift without a word to the galaxy. No one came with us. When we dropped into the signal's coordinates, space itself felt wrong. The stars had warped. Colors bled into shapes that made no sense. Sound doesn't travel in vacuum, but I swear on everything I love, I heard whispers through my suit. Voices I didn't recognize. Then we saw it. Floating in the void was a structure, not a ship, not an asteroid, just a shifting, slow-turning mass, black as a collapsed sun and shaped like nothing natural. It bent light. Our scanners failed. The AI on board tried to render it, but crashed within seconds. We fired anyway. The railgun shot hit, or seemed to. For a second, part of the mass shivered like liquid metal. Then, it opened, and we saw faces inside it. Not living ones, not alien ones, human faces, ours. It had seen us before. It had been watching Earth longer than we thought. The structure didn't retaliate. It just vanished. Not FTL, not cloaking. It ceased to exist in front of us, and the coordinates it left behind started corrupting our entire system. Code melting, files degrading, even memories being rewritten in the logs. We barely jumped back before the Mournblade disintegrated from the inside. Back at base, we brought the footage to Harren. He watched it in silence, lit a cigarette with shaking fingers, and said just 3 words. "It knows now." And that's when the countdown began. By the time the Galactic Council finally took us seriously, it was already too late. 3 more systems went dark. Not lost, erased. No survivors, no wreckage. Just coordinates that no longer returned anything. Ships that flew into those sectors came back blind and damaged, if they came back at all. Some drifted home weeks later, the crews completely insane, talking about voices, talking about copies of themselves floating in the dark, smiling. The veil wasn't just consuming matter, it was consuming identity. It was mapping consciousness. Still, the council dragged their feet. It was easier to blame humans. "You provoked it," they said. "This only escalated after your kind struck first." One of the Vivari diplomats, a long-necked amphibious noble, practically hissed at the hollow chamber table. "You poked into something that wasn't hunting you." I nearly broke my knuckles on that table. "We didn't poke," I growled. "We ran into something that already had our face printed on its wall. That thing's been studying Earth for longer than your species knew fire." Silence. Then Harren stepped in. "We're not asking you to believe us," he said. "We're asking how many more worlds you're willing to lose before you grow a spine." Of course, no one answered that. Cowards never do. So we stopped asking. The Ashborn went rogue. We no longer coordinated with the Terran Council or the intergalactic unions. They'd labeled us outlaws anyway. War criminals for attacking a non-hostile phenomenon. That's what they called the Veil now. A phenomenon. Tell that to the 12 billion that vanished on Camdera Prime. But something happened after that mission in the Dalen Rift. Something inside me. I stopped dreaming. Not like insomnia, not nightmares, I mean, nothing. Just black. It was like my subconscious had shut off. I started forgetting things too. What I ate the day before, a crewmate's name I'd known for years. And then one night, I looked in the mirror and saw myself smile before I had the chance to move my face. It mimics. That's when it hit me. The Veil doesn't need to invade. It needs us to look at it. Every scan, every drone feed, every analysis, it opens a back door. It doesn't just corrupt data. It rides it, embeds itself, watches through it. And worse, it mirrors what it sees. And it had seen me. That's when I told Harren we needed to shut down all digital analysis. No AI, no sensor feeds. Go analog, old school. If we wanted to survive, we had to stop giving it a window into our minds. He didn't argue. That's how desperate we were. We switched to manual targeting, voice-only comms, stripped down operating systems from the pre-AI era. We even built lead-lined dead rooms for strategy. No electronics, no data ports, nothing wireless. Just flesh, blood, and maps. And that's where we found it again. Not the Veil itself, a trace of it. A residual presence near a collapsed wormhole system the Elders once mapped. It was feeding, slowly, quietly, absorbing light, pulling energy, rewriting gravitational laws. But something else was there too. An Elder relic, one the galaxy had missed, buried beneath ice, on a moon orbiting a dead sun. It pulsed, weak but alive. We didn't hesitate. Launched a small team, just 5 of us, in vacuum suits, zero comms, analog nav. I led the descent myself. The structure was ancient, not stone, not metal. Something in between, almost like grown bone, shaped into a cathedral. I walked through halls that hummed with forgotten power, symbols shifting on the walls like memories being relived. Then I found it. Not a weapon, not a warning. A seed, small, glowing, faint gold, beating like a heart. And it spoke. Not in words, but thought. It didn't ask. It knew me. It knew Earth. It had been waiting for us. The Elders hadn't just warned the galaxy. They left behind a key. But only for us. Only for humans. Because we were the only ones mad enough, savage enough, damaged enough to survive what was coming. I brought the seed back. And the Veil felt it. The stars dimmed that night. We didn't sleep after that, none of us. Not from fear, not from adrenaline, from presence. The seed, whatever that thing was, didn't just glow or pulse anymore. It radiated something that bent time in the room. Memories got sharper. Pain resurfaced. You'd walk in there and feel like your worst moments were stitched into the walls. Like the relic wasn't just watching you. It was becoming you. Vec called it psychic feedback. Harren called it a trap. I called it the only chance we had left. I spent hours alone with it in the dead room. No lights, no tech. Just me and that unnatural glow, humming like a buried scream. The thing showed me flashes, not visions, more like echoes. The last moments of the elders. A whole race gathered in silent terror, watching something black stretch across their skies like a living curtain. The Veil didn't arrive as ships, didn't fight in the way we understood. It rewrote existence, like a painter gone insane, smearing over galaxies they no longer liked. The elders tried to resist it, but they couldn't understand it because they'd evolved too far, too clean, too perfect. So they looked down at us, a young, brutal, wounded species that hadn't forgotten how to bleed, one that could lie, hate, love, and kill without needing a reason. We weren't their mistake. We were their contingency. The seed wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was more like a genetic spark, a code hidden in consciousness itself, designed to bond with a human mind. Not an empire, not a council, a man. Flesh, guilt, memory, loss, someone whose trauma ran deep enough to house something older than light. It chose me. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. But the damn thing pulsed harder every time I got near it. It quieted when I touched it. My dreams came back, but they weren't mine anymore. I saw other worlds, other memories, fractured timelines where the Veil had tried to take Earth before, and failed. Because each time something primal pushed it back. Not tech, not firepower. Humanity itself, our chaos, our unpredictability, our refusal to play by the rules of logic. The Veil tried to mimic us, but it couldn't become what it didn't understand. And the more we evolved into cold, efficient, post-organic beings like the other species, the more vulnerable we became. We had to regress to survive. The Ashborn didn't wait for more council meetings. We went dark, completely. No transmissions, no coordinates shared. The fleet scattered across blind routes and rendezvous points only Harren and I knew. The Veil had started hunting me, and if I stayed in one place too long, it would learn too much. Not just from data, but from me. I was infected with it now, but the seed kept it at bay. It kept my thoughts. Mine. Barely. The whispers returned stronger after a few days. I'd hear them even when wide awake, voices of people I'd lost. My mother, years gone from cancer. An old squad mate, burned alive on Io. A girl I'd once loved back when Earth still had green forests. They spoke through the Veil, like it was wearing their faces to invite me inside. And God help me, part of me wanted to listen. But something always pulled me back. Pain. Raw, real, human pain. Not despair, not depression, but that stubborn ache that drives a man to keep fighting, even when everything around him screams to give up. That's what the Veil never understood. It consumed, copied, mimicked, but it didn't know how to suffer. Not like we do, and it's pain that makes us dangerous. That's when we got a signal. Not from the Council, not from the Ashborn, from Earth. An old emergency beacon, long dormant, had come alive under the Arctic Circle. Another seed. Maybe the last. And the Veil knew it. The countdown was over. I didn't want to go back. Not because of the danger. I'd made peace with dying years ago. But Earth held ghosts. Not the kind the Veil whispered with, but real ones. People I'd left behind. Regrets buried deeper than any alien ruin. Returning meant facing myself. And the man I used to be before war turned me into a weapon. But we had no choice. The Arctic signal pulsed through subspace like a flare shot into the void, encoded in a frequency so old it didn't match any known system. The Council dismissed it as atmospheric interference. The binary assembly declared it technically impossible. But I knew. Same rhythm, same pulse. It was another seed. And the Veil felt it too, because Earth-sky started changing. You wouldn't notice it if you weren't paying attention, just a faint distortion at first. Then stars disappearing one by one, not dimming, but winking out completely, as if someone were drawing curtains across the cosmos. Nights got colder, animals started behaving erratically, birds vanished from cities, dogs stopped barking. The sky wasn't the only thing watching anymore. I landed near what used to be Anchorage. The city was gone, half swallowed by permafrost, the other half rotted by economic collapse decades ago. A few scavenger enclaves lived out here, but most of them had gone silent over the past month. We touched down in stealth. No AI, no signals, no lights. Just the Mournblade skeleton crew and enough firepower to glass a continent. Harren didn't come this time. He was holding the Ashbourne line near Saturn, keeping the Veil distracted. Buying me time. The coordinates led us to an abandoned cryolab under a collapsed oil refinery. Arctic wind screamed through the ruins like the place was alive. We climbed through rusted wreckage, broken bones of a dead world's ambition, and found the hatch. It was still warm. Vec stayed behind with the ship, monitoring any Veil interference. He was the only one I trusted to pull me out if things went sideways. The others, Davis, Ortega, and Madsen, followed me into the dark. Inside, time stopped. The deeper we went, the less things made sense. Walls curved the wrong way. Shadows stretched too long. Ortega swore he saw a child's hand reach out from a rusted vent. Madsen threw up 3 times. Davis just kept repeating, "This ain't natural," under his breath. We found the chamber 6 floors down, frozen solid. A single obsidian pedestal surrounded by frost-covered terminals, and on it, just like before, was the seed. But this one pulsed faster, more alive, more aware, and it reacted the moment I stepped near. The whispers in my head fell silent. For the first time since Dalen Rift, I felt alone in my mind again. That's when it spoke. Not words, not memory, it spoke identity. It showed me Earth, not the way we see it, but the way the Elders saw it. A volatile, filthy planet teeming with self-destruction and brilliance. A forge, a crucible. One species ripping itself apart and building back again, over and over, stronger each time. It showed me the Veil's weakness. It cannot copy what is incomplete. Humanity, broken, self-loathing, beautiful in its refusal to be finished, was immune to perfection. Our contradictions, our madness, our stubbornness. The Veil couldn't digest that chaos. But it could still kill us. The seed was a key, yes, but not to stop the Veil, to lead it, lure it. Earth had to become the trap. We activated the seed. The lab shuddered. Reality twisted around us. The Veil felt the signal and came hard. I mean gravity bending, space folding hard. The sky above the Arctic cracked open like glass, and a mass poured through. Not a ship, not a creature, but formless hunger. Vec screamed over the comms. "It's here! The whole thing! It's coming through the clouds!" Davis turned to run. Something pulled him up, not down. His body just lifted into the ceiling and vanished. Madsen opened fire at nothing and collapsed, blood pouring from his eyes. I stayed still, because the seed wasn't finished. It merged into my chest. No pain, just light. And for a second I saw everything. The Veil's origin. Not from another dimension, not some galactic god. It was born of order, a failed attempt by an ancient race to sterilize chaos from the universe. They'd unleashed a force that couldn't tell the difference between entropy and life. The Veil wasn't evil. It was misguided balance. And now it saw me, not as a target but as a path. I turned towards the storm rising in the sky and whispered, "Come on, then." The moment I stepped out of the lab, the sky broke open. You ever seen a black hole twist space in real time? Imagine that, but vertical, not sucking in stars, but pouring something in. A stream of darkness, liquid and endless, like ink bleeding through the atmosphere. It wasn't just the sky changing. The rules were. Time slowed. Sound bent. I heard my own heartbeat, then heard it again 4 seconds later, like it was echoing from a future that hadn't happened yet. That's when I saw it. The veil wasn't some shapeless mist anymore. It had learned us. It had worn our memories, touched our signals, hijacked our frequencies. It came down in forms, faces, millions of them, human, alien, dead, alive, all stretched into impossible shapes, like a god's scrapbook gone wrong. I saw myself at the center. Not standing, not walking, floating, arms out, a perfect replica, smiling, mocking. And then it spoke, not in sound, in presence. Every part of me pulsed with it, like it was inside my spine, behind my eyes, coiled in my memories. It didn't threaten, it didn't roar, it just asked, "Is this what you are?" I didn't answer, because the seed inside me, still pulsing in my chest like a second heart, gave the only answer that mattered. I attacked. The relic had awakened something buried in my DNA. Not power, not strength, instinct. I lunged forward and the air cracked like I'd broken a window between worlds. My fists weren't weapons, but they moved faster than light for that 1 second. Pure will, no physics, no science. I hit the copy of me dead in the chest. And it shattered. The entire sky shivered. Then it retaliated. I was ripped off the ground and thrown 50 meters through the snow, skidding across frozen earth until my ribs screamed. My head rang. Blood leaked from my ears. But I was alive. It didn't understand pain the way I did. The veil tried next with sound, a low hum that hit the back of your skull like a spike. Madsen screamed through the comms. His last words were a prayer to a god we'd both stopped believing in during the EO campaign. Then his signal cut. Vec's voice followed, clearer but slower, like time was twisting even the radio. "Riker, it's everywhere now. You need to get out. We can't hold the perimeter. It's bleeding into orbit." But I didn't leave, because the veil wasn't trying to kill me. It was trying to mirror me again. The seed inside my chest flared hot and screamed against it. Not in sound, in memory. I started seeing every moment I ever regretted, played out in front of me. My brother's funeral, the civilians I failed to save in Titan's bombing, a girl I abandoned in Casablanca when I chose war over a future. It showed me those moments, because it thought they were weakness. But that was the mistake. Because my pain is where I keep my rage. I stood. I staggered through the broken snow, through wind that wasn't wind anymore, toward the rift in the sky. And I screamed back. "You want to know what I am?" I looked up into the darkness. Faces kept forming. Faces I loved. Faces I'd killed. Faces I'd never seen. I'm the reason the elders didn't make it, because I'm what they were afraid to become. The seed flared, and then the sky burned. A pulse shot out of my chest, not light, not fire, but something old. Raw, the veil shrieked, recoiled. Part of it peeled back like skin touched by acid. I felt it flinch, felt it. That was the first time I knew for certain. It wasn't invincible, it could feel, and that meant it could hurt. Behind me, the Mournblade came into view, limping toward the drop zone under manual flight. One engine barely holding, the hull scarred, but she was still flying. Vec was at the helm, face pale, eyes bloodshot, but alive. We had one shot. The relic was calling something, not to destroy the veil, but to trap it. We were bait. Earth was the cage. The cost? Me. I never believed in fate. I believed in war, in math, in probability and steel nerves. Fate was a word people used when they didn't want to admit they were already dead and just waiting for permission. But standing there, as the sky boiled open and the veil descended like a second atmosphere, I realized something. Maybe fate believes in us. The seed inside me. It wasn't just a relic. It wasn't a key. It was a lock, and I was the door it needed to close. Every second it sat in my chest, I felt it sinking deeper. Bone to bone, memory to memory, like it was stitching itself into my soul. If I died, it would die with me. But if I lived, it could finish what the elders started. It could end the veil. The Mournblade crashed 20 meters away. No ceremony, just metal screeching, fire billowing, and Vec stumbling out with a rifle slung over his back and a detonator in his hand. "You're not doing this alone," he said. I didn't argue. There was no time left for speeches. The veil had landed, not physically, but as a presence that soaked the air. Snow floated upward. Ground trembled. Gravity buckled in pulses. Trees bent toward the sky like they were begging. And still that voice kept whispering from inside my head. "You are unstable. You are contradiction. You are doomed." It didn't understand. That was the point. The relic had been leading us here from the start. The elders couldn't destroy the veil because they tried to outthink it, outsmart it, build systems to control it. But humans? We burn the systems down. We fight with instinct, with fury, with something ancient in our blood that doesn't need understanding, just purpose. And I had mine. The relic started pulsing harder, so fast it hurt. My chest felt like it was about to split open. The cold vanished. I couldn't feel my fingers, or my face. But I could feel it, the veil curling in around us, wrapping the earth like a coil. It wanted me, needed to finish the copy, to absorb the last piece. I stepped toward the eye of the storm, the center of the distortion, a tear in space, hovering just above the ice, opening wider every second. Vec followed behind, silent. He knew. We didn't need to speak anymore. Then something emerged from the rift, a shape, me, again. Only this time it wasn't smiling. It looked lost, broken, like the veil had finally seen what it had been trying to mimic, and couldn't handle it. It had worn my face so long it started feeling what I felt, and it didn't like it. I walked up to it, hand burning with energy. My copy mirrored me, eyes wide, silent, no hatred, no rage, just fear. "You wanted to be us," I said, "but you can't handle what we are." The seed flared its final pulse. A signal shot into the sky, not up, inward, through the rift, through the veil. A recall command, an ancient override, and it obeyed. The entire sky screamed. The veil shuddered, twisted, tried to fold itself back out of existence. But the trap had sprung. The seed in my chest had bound it to me. And as it recoiled, tried to tear free, I felt myself unraveling with it. Blood poured from my nose, my ears, my eyes. My body didn't belong to me anymore. I was the anchor, and I had seconds left. Vec ran forward. "Let it go, Riker!" But I turned and tossed him the detonator. "No," I said. "You let me go." I turned back to the copy, still standing, still shaking, and I stepped into it. I felt everything, every planet it had consumed, every voice it had silenced, every moment of blind, perfect order it had imposed on a universe that was never meant to be clean. And I tore it all down from the inside. There was no light at the end, no tunnel, no peace, just silence. Not empty, not cold, just silent. I floated somewhere between memory and unbeing, my thoughts unraveling like thread soaked in gasoline. Pieces of me flared out, scattered, faces, voices, smells, the touch of someone I loved, the scream of someone I killed, the long, heavy quiet of watching stars die from a gunship window. But in that silence, something held on. Me, the part of me that refused to disappear, the defiant, broken thing the veil never understood. It tried to mimic me, yes, tried to mirror my pain, my regrets, my rage, but it didn't know what it felt like to live with it, to carry it, to fight through it, day after day. And that's why I didn't vanish with it. I became its wound, a scar it couldn't close. I don't know how long I was gone. Time doesn't work the same in the veil. Seconds feel like years, years feel like noise. But eventually I heard something cut through the silence. A voice. Vec. Pull him back. Pull him back now. And then I woke up choking on air I didn't know I missed. I was inside a medical pod. Half the systems flickered. My body was wrecked, muscle torn, bones cracked, eyes burned half blind from exposure to something no human should have seen. But I was alive. The seed was gone. And so was the veil. At least that's what they told me. It didn't happen all at once. Over the following weeks, systems across the galaxy began coming back online. The erased planets? Still gone. Nothing could undo that. But the expansion stopped. The rift above Earth? Sealed, like it had never existed. The Galactic Council finally acknowledged what happened, issued formal apologies to humanity, called us reckless but necessary. Vivari Prime tried to propose sanctions again. The Ashborn responded by detonating one of their border outposts. There were no more proposals after that. Humanity became something else overnight. Not a species, not a power, a myth, a whisper in the dark. The ones who stared into a god's eyes and made it blink. They say the Ashborn disbanded, but that's a lie. We went deeper, underground, quiet. Because the veil may be gone, but the relics aren't, and we've learned better than to trust anything ancient, glowing, and full of promise. Vec visits sometimes. He says my neural scans are unstable. Too many fragments, too many scars. He's not sure how much of me is still me. I told him that's how I know I'm human, because I'm not supposed to be whole. Earth's rebuilding now, slowly. The Arctic is still scorched. The old lab's buried beneath a containment vault, sealed in 20 different languages. No one's allowed near it, not even me. But some nights I dream, not of the veil, of the other Riker, the one it made, the one who looked into my eyes in that final second and didn't hate me. Maybe it learned something after all, or maybe it left a piece of itself behind, inside me, waiting, watching. And if it ever comes back, God help the stars. We'll be ready, because we're not just survivors. We're the fire that burns after the world ends. We're human, and we are not done yet.